Many of you guys may not know this, but before I started making videos on YouTube and before I started a career in aerospace, I actually used to flip cars. And with used car prices super inflated during the pandemic, and although they're not as high anymore, they're still very high, I figured it would be a great time to make a video for beginners who are interested in getting started. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. So in this video, I'm gonna go over exactly what specific cars I used to look for to flip. I'm gonna go over where you can find these cars. I'm gonna go over how to negotiate a good price with the seller. And then on the other end, I'm gonna teach you how to sell these cars. Now let's start off by talking about which specific cars you should buy. Now there are literally tens of hundreds of niches out there. This is totally up to preference. You can choose American cars, German cars, Japanese cars, pickup trucks, SUVs, whatever you wanna focus on. However, I will say that you should focus on cars that you think other people would wanna buy, not cars that you specifically, personally would buy. I feel that this is a very common mistake I see with new sellers. So in this scenario, me personally, let's stick with Japanese cars. Not just any Japanese car. I personally like to stick with Japanese cars that are around 10 years old, maybe a little less than 10 years old. But if I see a good deal on a Japanese car that's, let's say, 11 years old, I will consider buying it. The reason why I think 10 years is a good sweet spot, it's because it's not too new where you have to pay a premium in price and it's more pricey, yet it's not too old where you're more prone to mechanical issues. I also like to stick to cars that have around 150,000 miles on them. Now I know for many of you guys, 150,000 miles probably sounds like a lot, but again, you want to buy cars that others will buy, not that you would buy, and there is a big market for these cars. So the reason why I choose 150,000 miles is similar to the 10-year mark. I think it's a sweet spot. I think the mileage isn't too low where you have to pay a premium for low mileage, yet the mileage isn't too high either. What I've noticed from my personal experience is that Japanese cars with 150,000 miles still go on for many years. Most Japanese cars I've seen go well over 200,000 miles, so there is some life left in these cars. Now, the reason why I buy these specific cars, Japanese cars that are around 10 years old with around 150,000 miles, is because I personally believe, and in my personal experience this has been true, that the market for these cars is huge. I've had many moments where I put up a car for sale and it's gone in like less than 2 days. So there is a market for these cars. And I also tend to believe that Japanese cars that are around 10 years old and have around 150,000 miles tend to be a lot more mechanically reliable than their American or German counterparts. Now by Japanese cars, some examples are Honda, Toyota, Nissan. These are cars that we've all seen. Okay, so now that you know which car to buy, where can you buy these cars? So these days, Facebook Marketplace is probably the most popular option. Back in the day, a lot of people used to buy cars and sell cars on Craigslist. Now, Craigslist did start charging you $5 to post your car. So I think after they did that, the amount of people going on Craigslist has been cut in half, if not more. Now, I'm not sure if they still do that, but I know that was the case. In my opinion, Facebook Marketplace is probably the #1 place to go. I've heard OfferUp is a pretty good place to buy as well, because there are some people that are old or young who don't have Facebook. So OfferUp might be a good place as well. It was also very popular to buy cars from car auctions. I will say, however, that this is a lot more difficult than it used to be. First of all, getting access to a car auction. How are you gonna get there? Now, some of you might have friends that have access to car auctions, which is nice, but the deals that you get in auctions are not nearly as good as they used to be. It's a lot more competitive now in my experience. Now, there might be an auction around you that's not as competitive, and good deals can be found anywhere. So I still recommend you check it out if you can. It's a cool experience. But in my opinion, it has become a lot more competitive because you're competing against businesses that are able to take a much smaller profit margin, if any. So keep that in mind. Now, other than Facebook Marketplace and auctions, a very good place to buy cars is buying them privately. If you know a friend who's trying to sell a car, or a friend of a friend, or a family friend, something like that, many times this is where you can get some of the best deals on cars. However, I will say that this option is obviously not scalable. How many of your friends' friends are selling their cars? It's usually not that many, but it's a great way to get started. Now, let's go over a few things that I would look for when I was going out to buy a car. So I actually used to search for keywords like needs work, or needs tow, or needs repairs. And I'd actually create alerts on these search words to bring the cars to me. The reason why I would search for these keywords is because when people type these things in the description, usually that tells me that there is some wiggle room for negotiation, and there's also some area where I can potentially create a profit. Also, when looking at these cars in person, If the car is dirty inside and out, I literally would not care, because in the grand scheme of things, I believe that that's a very small item to fix and it just takes a little bit of elbow grease. Although there are some red flags that I would definitely pay attention to. Pretty much mainly the title. I would make sure that the title is a clean title. It's not a salvage title. It's not even a rebuilt title. And it definitely should not have a lien on it. Reason being is because I feel like these three things, first of all, you can't even register the car if there's a lien on it. If the title is salvage or rebuilt, it totally kills the value of the car. So I try my best to stay away from them. I'd also do a quick check with the mileage on the title compared with the mileage on the car and the mileage on the ad to make sure everything aligns and I'm not being lied to. Now, because many of the cars I would buy would have mechanical issues in them, I would make sure I'm taking my OBD2 scanner with me just to make sure it's not something crazy like a catalytic converter. And I would test drive these vehicles to look at basics, such as making sure the engine does not have a knock in it. And again, this might take some experience. You can take a mechanic with you if you feel comfortable. Also, I'd make sure that the transmission is shifting smoothly. Reason being, I'll mainly look out for these two things is because you don't want to buy a car with a bad engine or a bad transmission unless the price is good. Don't get me wrong here. If the price is low enough, then I wouldn't mind that either. But generally, these two expenses would totally kill your profit. Also, when I'm checking out a car, the inside, I would make sure all the electronics work, like the power windows, the sunroof, the air conditioning. A lot of times the air conditioner in cars does not work. I'd also make sure that all of the lights work. And while I'm inspecting the car, anything that does not work, I'll definitely make a mental note of it, write these things down, because I will use these things to negotiate later on. Now let's talk about how to actually negotiate the price of the car. So let's say you go to see a car, you like the car, and you think there is some room for profit here. The first thing you do is do not show how interested you are in the car. You do not want the seller to know how interested. You don't want the seller to think that you're willing to buy the car no matter what the price is. So first of all, you ask the seller, is there any room for negotiation? Second off, all of the items that you had noted that either were not advertised in the actual ad for the car, or issues that you found that the seller did not mention, this is a time you bring it up. You mention that, hey, I like this car, I want to make a deal, I have cash on hand. However, these are issues that I did not anticipate, and is there a price that you can adjust all these features into? Now, you want the seller to name his price first, a lower price if possible. But if you really have to do it, then don't be shy. Don't be shy to do a lowball offer. Now, the worst the seller will say is no. But don't be one of those guys that sends a lowball offer without actually even seeing the car, because as a seller, you're just going to automatically assume this guy's not interested. So if you see the car, you like it, there are a few things in it, don't be scared to make a lowball offer. If they say no, go back to negotiating. Negotiating is actually very important because it's many times on the price of the car that you make your profit on, not the actual selling. So make sure you have a price in your head that you're willing to pay for this car, and don't pay $1 more. And of course, the most powerful part in negotiating is not being emotionally invested. It's the power to say no and walk away. So have other cars lined up. Don't just be after one car. Have a few cars lined up. If the deal doesn't go through, be like, hey, I'll be on my way. I'll look at another car. Many times, if the seller is very motivated, they will come back and be like, hey, I'm willing to negotiate further if you really want the car. Now, let's say you found the car you like, you negotiated a good price and bought the car, towed it to your place if you had to, and now you fix it up. Now you're ready to sell. How do you go about selling? Well, generally all I do is just take some nice pictures. I try to take vertical pictures. It sets you apart from everyone else. Everyone else on places like Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, they take horrible pictures of their cars generally. So this is a good time for you to stand out. So again, I take nice vertical pictures. I post them on places like Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp. And in the description, I will write the general information about the car, the make, the model, the year, the mileage, stuff like that. Now, I'd also point out all of the features that are options in the car. Like, let's say your car has all-wheel drive. This is very useful that a lot of people would love to know. Let's say it has a sunroof. Let's say, it has power windows, power door locks, all of those things, power seats, heated seats. These are things that people like to know about the car, and it makes your car sound special. Now, along with that, I would also put down any information that you have done to the car, like work, like Let's say you changed the tires on it before you sold it. Let's say you changed the brakes on it before you sold it. Let's say you just did the oil change in the car. Point out these things because people love to know that the car was taken care of. At the end of it, make sure you give your price and you write or best offer, OBO. It's a very common term used in buying and selling cars. What this tells many buyers is that the seller is interested in making a deal. They are willing to negotiate. Now, before I end this video, I just wanted to point out 2 more bonus tips about local laws. I feel like many people don't talk about this for some reason. So one thing I wanted to mention is look up your local laws about how many cars you're allowed to buy and sell, because many states actually do have limits on this, believe it or not. For example, in some states, you can buy and sell up to 6 cars a year without a dealership license. After that, I guess you have to go get a dealership license. Also, there are many states with lemon laws. A lemon usually refers to a car that was sold in bad faith and has many mechanical issues that the buyer was not informed of. And many states have a limit for these lemon laws. For example, if you buy a car that's 7 years old or less, then that means that car is covered under lemon laws in some states, and the buyer is entitled to our full refund within 30 days of purchase. Yet, if the car is over 7 years old, the buyer is not entitled to these rules. So make sure you know your lemon laws. Is good to know. With that being said, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you guys in the next one. Peace, like, and subscribe.